The morning rush at the little roadside diner always started the same way. The smell of coffee filled the air before the sun even came up, and the sound of sizzling bacon mixed with the soft chatter of early customers. Behind the counter, a young woman moved quickly between tables, balancing plates and pouring refills with quiet precision. Her name was Emily Carter, and to most people in town she was just another waitress, friendly, hardworking, and always smiling even when she was tired. Emily had been working at the Silver Spoon Diner for almost 5 years. It wasn't a bad job, but it wasn't the life she once dreamed of either. Every morning she tied her hair back, put on her faded blue uniform, and told herself, just one more day. Her hands were often red from scrubbing dishes and her feet ached after every shift. Still, she showed up on time, took care of everyone, and never complained. The regulars liked her. Old Mr. Daniels came in every morning for pancakes and called her sunshine. The truck drivers who stopped on their long routes always said she made the best coffee this side of the highway. Emily smiled at them, laughed at their jokes, and listened to their stories. But no one really knew her story, not the full one. They saw the cheerful waitress, but they didn't see the part of her that still dreamed every night about music, or how she sometimes woke up hearing piano notes in her head. Long before she started working at the diner, Emily had been different. As a child, she was quiet and shy, but when she sat at the piano, something inside her came alive. Her mother used to say that Emily didn't just play, she spoke through the keys. They lived in a small house with a second-hand piano that her mother had saved up to buy. It was old and a little out of tune, but it was the most beautiful thing Emily had ever seen. She spent hours practicing, learning songs by ear, and later, writing little melodies of her own. Her mother encouraged her every step of the way. "One day you'll play on a big stage," she used to say, smiling from the doorway as Emily played after school. But life has a way of changing even the best dreams. When Emily was 16, her mother got sick. The hospital bills piled up. Fast in college, music lessons, and competitions all became luxuries they could no longer afford. Emily left school early to help pay for treatment. After her mother passed away 2 years later, Emily found herself completely alone. No family, no savings, and no clear future. That's how she ended up at the diner. At first, it was just a job to survive. She told herself it would be temporary, just until she got back on her feet. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into years. Every time she thought about trying again, maybe teaching piano or recording something, life reminded her that rent was due and bills didn't pay themselves. So she pushed the dream aside and kept pouring coffee. But the music never really left her. Late at night, when the diner closed and the lights dimmed, Emily would sometimes sit at the old upright piano in the corner. It was out of tune and missing a few keys, but to her it was a small piece of what she'd lost. She never played in front of anyone. The few times her coworkers caught her, she'd stop immediately, embarrassed. "Just messing around," she'd say, smiling awkwardly. But when no one was there, she played as if the world were listening. Her favorite time was Sunday nights. The diner closed early, and the streets outside went quiet. She'd wipe down the last tables, turn off the neon sign, and sit alone at the piano. Her fingers would find old melodies, songs her mother taught her, songs she wrote herself years ago, and she'd let them fill the empty room. Sometimes she'd cry quietly while playing, though she didn't always know why. Maybe it was grief, or maybe it was the strange comfort of remembering who she used to be. That night, like so many before, was another long shift. The crowd had been heavier than usual, travelers passing through, a group of high school kids celebrating, and a few regulars lingering over pie and stories. Emily had barely sat down all day. Her back hurt and her voice was hoarse from talking over the clatter of dishes. But as she turned the sign to closed and locked the door, a small wave of peace washed over her. It was just her, the quiet diner, and the faint hum of the refrigerator in the background. She took off her apron and walked toward the piano. The stool creaked as she sat down. She rested her hands on the keys but didn't play right away. She looked around the room. Empty booths, crumbs on the counter, a few napkins left behind. To anyone else, it was just an ordinary place. But to her, it was a kind of stage, even if no one was watching. When she finally began to play, the sound was soft at first. Her fingers trembled slightly, tired from work, but soon the notes started to flow together. The melody was one she'd written, long ago, a song without words, full of sadness and hope at the same time. The kind of song that comes from somewhere deep, from memories you don't talk about but still carry inside. Her eyes closed as she played, and for a few minutes, she wasn't a waitress anymore. She wasn't the tired girl cleaning tables. She was a musician again, the one her mother had believed in. The song carried her back to old moments, sitting beside her mother on a rainy afternoon, laughing when they played duets. The excitement of her first recital, the sound of applause echoing in her ears. But then, just as clearly, came the harder memories. The hospital room, the silence after her mother was gone, the day she walked into the diner for the first time. Her heart ached, but she kept playing. Each note seemed to wash something heavy away. What she didn't know was that someone was still there, sitting quietly at a corner booth. He had come in late that evening, ordered a cup of coffee, and had been reading something on his laptop. Emily thought he'd left when the rest of the customers did, but he had stayed behind, lost in thought. Now he sat completely still, watching her play, moved by the emotion in the music. The tune was unfamiliar, but it touched something deep in him. When the last note faded, he didn't move for several seconds. Emily exhaled softly and stood up, startled when she saw him. "Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't know anyone was still. Here," she said quickly, embarrassed. "We're closed, but I can pack something to go if you'd like." The man shook his head, smiling gently. "No, that's okay. I didn't mean to stay this long. I just didn't want to interrupt. That was beautiful." Emily felt her face flush. "Oh, thank you. It's nothing, really. Just something I play sometimes." "That didn't sound like nothing," he said quietly. "Did you write it?" She hesitated, unsure how to answer. "A long time ago," she admitted. Before life got busy." He nodded as if he understood perfectly. "You've got real talent. You should keep playing." Emily smiled awkwardly, picking up her apron. Compliments always made her uncomfortable, especially about her music. "Thanks, but I'm just a waitress. It's just a hobby now." The man looked like he wanted to say more, but instead he simply placed a few bills on the table and stood. "Well, hobby or not, it moved me," he said. "That's something special." When he left, the bell above the door jingled softly, and Emily stood there for a moment, staring at the empty space he'd just walked through. She didn't know who he was or why his words stayed with her, but somehow, they did. As she turned off the last of the lights, she caught her reflection in the diner's window. Tired eyes, messy hair, coffee stains on her shirt. And yet, behind all of that, there was still a spark. Maybe for the first time in a long while, she believed she could be more than what people saw. That night, lying in bed in her small apartment above the laundromat, Emily couldn't sleep. The man's words echoed in her mind. "You've got real talent. You should keep playing." She thought about her mother again, the way she used to sit beside her, clapping after every song, always saying, "Never stop, no matter what." Emily turned toward the window, watching the faint glow of streetlights, and whispered softly, "Maybe I won't." The next morning, she woke early and walked to the diner before her shift. The sun hadn't risen yet, and the world felt still. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and for a few minutes just sat at the piano again. Her fingers brushed the keys, and she played a few quiet chords. It wasn't much, just enough to start her day with a piece of herself. Outside, cars began to pass, and the first regulars would soon be coming in for breakfast. Emily smiled faintly, tied on her apron, and got ready to work. To anyone watching, nothing about her life seemed different. But inside her, something had shifted, small but real. A tiny spark of hope had flickered back to life. Maybe she was just a waitress for now. But maybe someday the music she carried inside her would be enough to change everything. The next few days passed like any other. The clinking of plates, the buzz of conversation, the hum of the old ceiling fan. Life at the diner moved in its same familiar rhythm. But inside, something had changed for Emily Carter. It wasn't something you could see from the outside. She still smiled at customers, took orders, and wiped down tables just as she always did. Yet every time she glanced at the piano in the corner, she felt a quiet pull. The stranger's words still echoed in her head. "You've got real talent. You should keep playing." She tried to brush them off, but they lingered. It was strange how a single sentence could stay with you, especially when it touched something you'd buried deep inside. She didn't even know his name, yet his voice replayed in her mind every time she walked past that piano. One slow afternoon when the diner was almost empty, her coworker Lena noticed her looking toward the piano again. "You thinking about playing that thing?" Lena asked, smiling as she wiped down the counter. Emily laughed softly. "I was just remembering. I used to play a lot when I was younger." "I didn't know that," Lena said, surprised. "What kind of music?" "A bit of everything," Emily said, her voice quiet. "Mostly classical, sometimes my own stuff. I haven't really played for real in years." "You should," Lena said simply. "You're always here before closing anyway. Might as well do something for yourself once in a while." Emily shrugged. "Maybe." That night she did. When the diner closed, she sat down again, the lights dim, the air still warm from the day. Her fingers moved over the keys more confidently this time. The music started soft, then grew stronger, filling the small space with sound. It wasn't perfect. Some keys were off pitch and her timing slipped once or twice, but she didn't care. For those few minutes, she wasn't a waitress surrounded by dishes and coffee cups. She was a girl who still had a dream. She didn't notice that someone was standing outside, listening through the glass door. It was the same man from before, the one who had heard her play that night. He had come back to thank her, maybe to hear her again, but seeing her lost in the music, he stayed where he was, not wanting to interrupt. When the song ended, he quietly knocked on the glass. Emily jumped a little, startled. When she saw who it was, her eyes widened. She unlocked the door and smiled awkwardly. "Oh, it's you. I didn't mean to scare you," he said, stepping inside. "I was walking by and heard you playing. Couldn't help it. I had to stop." She blushed slightly. "You must think I'm crazy, playing in an empty diner." "Not at all," he said with a kind smile. "It's rare to see someone play with that kind of feeling. I didn't get your name last time." "It's Emily," she said. "Emily Carter," he nodded. "Nice to meet you, Emily. I'm David Langford." They shook hands, and for a moment there was a comfortable silence. "I really meant what I said before," David told her. "You have a gift. Have you ever thought about performing?" Emily laughed softly. "Performing? Not in a long time. I used to when I was younger, but that feels like another lifetime now." David looked thoughtful. "I organize a small local concert every year. Nothing big, mostly for charity. People from the community perform. We've had singers, guitarists, even a few students from the music school. I think you'd be perfect for it." She froze, unsure what to say. "Oh no, I couldn't. I mean, I'm not a performer anymore." "You don't have to be," he said gently. "It's not about being famous. It's about sharing something honest. And what you played, that was honest." Emily shook her head, smiling nervously. "I appreciate that really, but I don't think I could do it." David didn't push, he just left her his card. "If you change your mind, call me, even if it's just to talk about music." Then he thanked her again and left. For a while, Emily just stood there, staring at the card in her hand. His words had stirred something deep inside her. Something she wasn't sure she was ready to face. She put the card in her apron pocket and went back to cleaning, but her heart wasn't in it. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay awake in her small apartment, the card resting on her nightstand. She kept glancing at it as if it might disappear. "A concert," she whispered to herself. Me, performing again? It sounded ridiculous, but the thought wouldn't leave her. The next morning, as she got ready for work, she caught herself humming the tune she'd played the night before. It had been years since she'd felt that little flicker of excitement, the kind that made her stomach twist with both fear and hope. When she got to the diner, Lena noticed right away. "You're smiling," she teased. "Did something good happen?" Emily laughed. "I don't know yet." During her break, she pulled out her phone and looked up the number on the card. She typed it once, then deleted it, then typed it again. After a long hesitation, she finally pressed call. David answered quickly. "Emily, I was hoping you'd call." "I don't know why I'm calling," she admitted with a nervous laugh. "I guess I just wanted to ask more about that concert." "It's nothing formal," he explained. "Just a small event at the community center. We raise money for local kids' music lessons. People perform, sometimes amateurs, sometimes professionals. The crowd's always supportive. I think you'd fit right in." "I don't know," she said softly. "I haven't played in front of anyone in years." "Then this could be a good way to start again," he said. "No pressure, no competition, just you, the piano, and people who love music." Emily was quiet for a long time. Then, almost without realizing it, she said, "Maybe I could try." "That's all I ask," David said warmly. "Just try." They agreed to meet the next day after her shift so he could show her the venue and the piano she'd be using. The next evening, when she arrived at the community center, Emily felt her heart race. The stage wasn't big, just a small wooden platform with a simple black piano at the center. But to her, it looked like something enormous. She ran her fingers over the keys, feeling the smooth surface beneath her skin. David stood nearby, watching her. "Feels right, doesn't it?" She nodded slowly. "It feels like home." For the next 2 weeks, Emily practiced every night after work. Some nights she was so tired she could barely keep her eyes open, but she played anyway. Her fingertips grew sore again, just like when she was a teenager, but she didn't mind. She worked on the piece she'd written long ago, the one that always reminded her of her mother. Every note held a memory, every pause carried a breath of her old life. Lena noticed the change in her. "You're glowing lately," she said, one night as they cleaned up. "Something's different," Emily smiled. "I'm playing again. For real this time." Lena grinned. "About time. I always thought there was something special about you." The night of the concert came faster than she expected. As she stood backstage listening to the other performers, her hands trembled. The room was filled with people, families, students, and townsfolk she recognized from the diner. She felt her heart pound in her chest. When her name was called, she took a deep breath and walked out onto the stage. The lights felt hot, the air heavy with silence. She sat at the piano, her fingers shaking as they hovered over the keys. For a brief moment, fear took over. What if I make a mistake? What if they laugh? What if I'm not good enough anymore? But then she remembered her mother's voice, soft and sure. Never stop no matter what, so she played. The first few notes were hesitant, but as the melody grew, so did her confidence. The music filled the hall, tender and full of emotion. It wasn't just a song, it was her story. The audience sat perfectly still, drawn in by the quiet power of each note. Some closed their eyes, some leaned forward, and by the time she reached the final chord, there wasn't a sound in the room except the echo of the last note fading away. When she looked up, she saw tears in a few eyes, even David's. Then came the applause. It started soft, then grew louder until the whole room was clapping. Emily sat there overwhelmed, unable to move for a moment. Afterward, people came up to her to say how beautiful it was, how the music touched them. She thanked each one quietly, her voice barely above a whisper. David found her backstage, smiling. "I told you," he said. "You belong on a stage." Emily felt tears sting her eyes, but she smiled through them. "Thank you for believing in me." He shook his head. You did this yourself. That night, as she walked home under the stars, Emily felt lighter than she had in years. The streets were quiet, the world peaceful, and inside her, something had changed. She wasn't just the girl behind the counter anymore. She was someone who had found her voice again. When she got back to her apartment, she sat by the window replaying the night in her mind. The applause, the music, the faces in the crowd, it all felt like a dream. But the best part wasn't the attention or the praise. It was the feeling that her mother would have been proud. As the clock ticked past midnight, Emily smiled to herself and whispered, "This is just the beginning." And deep down, she knew it was. The next morning, when Emily Carter woke up, she could still hear the echoes of the applause in her mind. It felt almost unreal, like a dream she didn't want to end. She had spent years living quietly unnoticed, moving from table to table at the diner, never expecting anything more. But that night on stage had changed something inside her. She had seen what it felt like to be seen again, to share something that came straight from her heart. When she walked into work that day, Lena was already there, waiting with a grin. "So, how did it go?" she asked, leaning against the counter. Emily laughed softly. "You could say it went pretty well. I knew it," Lena said. "Someone even posted a clip of you on social media. People are talking about you." Emily blinked, surprised. "Wait, what?" Lena pulled out her phone and showed her. Sure enough, there it was. A short video of her performance from the concert. Someone had recorded it from the audience. The title read, "The Waitress Who Made Everyone Cry." It had already gathered a few thousand views overnight. Emily stared at the screen, speechless. Seeing herself play, seeing the emotion on her own face, made her heart race. She hadn't thought much of it when she performed. She'd only wanted to play from her heart. But now, watching it, she realized just how much that night had meant. "I didn't even know someone was filming," she said softly. "Well, they did," Lena replied, smiling. "And they caught something special. Look at these comments. People love you." Emily scrolled through the comments, her hands trembling slightly. "This song broke me. I felt every note. She plays like she's telling a story." There were dozens of messages, all from strangers, yet somehow they felt deeply personal. For a moment, Emily didn't know what to do with it. It wasn't fame, not really, but it was the first time in years that people had truly seen her, for who she was. She looked up at Lena and said quietly, "I don't even know how to feel." "Feel proud," Lena said. "You deserve it." That day, the diner felt different. A few customers recognized her from the video. Some smiled at her and said things like, "You were amazing last night," or "I saw you play online." She blushed every time, not used to the attention. Even the regulars seemed to look at her with new eyes. But Emily didn't let it go to her head. Between serving tables and refilling coffee cups, she still moved with her same gentle rhythm. Inside, though, she carried a quiet sense of hope. For the first time in a long time, she felt that maybe her life didn't have to stay small. That evening, she received a call from David Langford. "Emily, I just wanted to tell you again. You were incredible," he said. "People can't stop talking about your performance." "Thank you," she said softly. "I never expected any of this. I'm just glad I didn't mess up." "You didn't just not mess up," he said. "You connected with people. That's something you can't teach. Listen, I was wondering, how would you feel about performing again?" Emily's eyes widened. "Again, you mean another concert?" "Not exactly. A few local events are coming up, a fundraiser, a small radio feature, things like that. I think you'd be perfect for them. You could share your story, your music. People love stories like yours, Emily. Real stories." She hesitated. "I don't know, David. I'm not used to all that. I mean, I'm still working full-time at the diner." "I understand," he said gently. "But think about it. You have something special. You don't have to give up your job. Just take a chance, one step at a time." After they hung up, Emily sat quietly in her apartment, thinking. The thought of performing again both thrilled and scared her. What if she failed? What if this little burst of attention was just luck, something that would fade as quickly as it came? But then she remembered her mother's words from long ago, never stop no matter what. And for the first time, she realized that maybe life was giving her another chance to honor those words. That night, she called David back and said, "Okay, I'll do it." The next few weeks became a blur of long days and late nights. Emily still worked her shifts at the diner, but every evening after closing, she practiced. Sometimes Lena stayed behind to listen, leaning against the counter, with a cup of coffee. "You know," she said one night, "the way you play, it feels like you're talking without words." "That's kind of how it feels," Emily said with a small smile. "It's the only way I know how to really say what's inside." The second performance came at a local radio fundraiser. It wasn't a big crowd, just a few dozen people in a cozy hall, but it felt special. This time she didn't feel as nervous. When she sat down at the piano, she took a deep breath and let her fingers do what they knew best. The room filled with the gentle, emotional flow of her music, and once again she could feel the audience connecting with her. After the performance, the host interviewed her briefly. "You said you work as a waitress?" he asked with a warm smile. "Yes," Emily said, laughing shyly. "That's my day job. And now you're touching hearts with your music. That's quite a journey." She smiled, her eyes soft. "I guess I just play what I feel. I never thought anyone would want to listen." But people did want to listen. Within days, more local stations started sharing clips of her playing. Small magazines reached out, wanting to write about her story, the waitress with the piano that made people cry. At first, it was overwhelming. She wasn't used to cameras or interviews or people asking for her time. But every time she felt nervous, she reminded herself of why she started playing again. For her mother, for herself, and for everyone who needed a little reminder that it's never too late to start over. Still, life didn't magically become easy. The attention brought new pressures. Some nights she doubted herself, wondering if she really deserved it all. There were bills to pay, early shifts at the diner, and moments when exhaustion made her question whether she could keep going. But then she'd sit at the piano, touch the keys, and remember the peace it gave her. One evening, after another long day, she came home to find a letter in her mailbox. It was from the local arts council. They had seen her video and wanted to invite her to perform at their upcoming city event, a big step up from anything she had done before. Her first reaction was disbelief. Then, slowly, excitement crept. And this wasn't just a small-town concert or a local fundraiser. It was a real stage, a real audience, the kind of chance she had once dreamed about as a little girl. But fear followed close behind. What if she wasn't ready? What if people expected too much? She called David again. "I got this letter," she said. "They want me to perform at the city event. I don't know what to do." He chuckled softly. "What you've always done, Emily. You sit down, you play, and you let them feel what you feel. That's all you need." When the night of the event arrived, Emily stood backstage, her heart racing. The venue was larger than anything she'd ever experienced. Bright lights, a packed audience, and a grand piano shining under the spotlights. She could hear the faint murmurs of the crowd waiting. As she stepped onto the stage, the lights felt blinding. She sat at the piano, took a slow breath, and looked out at the audience. Somewhere in that sea of faces, she imagined her mother sitting in the front row, smiling proudly. Then, she began to play. The song was the same one she had written years ago, but now it carried a new weight, a deeper truth. Every note told the story of a girl who lost everything and found her way back through music. The sound was soft and fragile at first, but soon it grew, rich, powerful, full of emotion. When she finished, there was silence. For a moment she wondered if she had done something wrong. Then slowly the applause began. Soft at first, then rising until the whole hall was on its feet. Emily bowed, tears in her eyes. The light shimmered on her face, and in that moment, she realized something. She wasn't just a waitress who happened to play piano anymore. She was a musician again. After the show, reporters wanted to talk to her, people wanted photos, and organizers thanked her for moving the audience so deeply. But amid all the excitement, she stayed humble. When David found her backstage, she hugged him tightly. "I can't believe this is happening," she said. He smiled. "Believe it. You earned every bit of it." That night, when she got home, she sat quietly at her old upright piano, the one in the diner she loved so much. She played softly to herself, the sound echoing through the empty room. It reminded her of where she started, of all the lonely nights she had played with no one listening. Now the world was listening, but deep down she knew she wasn't playing for fame or applause. She was playing for her mother, for the little girl who never gave up, and for every person who felt invisible but still carried a dream inside them. As she finished the final note, she whispered softly, "This is for you, Mom." And for the first time in years, she didn't feel small anymore. She felt whole, as if life had finally come full circle. The days after the city performance passed like a dream. Emily Carter still woke up early, still tied her apron and went to the diner, but everything around her felt different now. Customers smiled wider when they saw her. Some even asked for her autograph on napkins or took pictures with her by the counter. It was strange, but also touching. She never bragged about any of it. If anything, she blushed whenever someone brought it up. "I'm still the same," she'd say with a shy smile, sliding a plate of pancakes onto the table. But inside, she felt something she hadn't felt in a very long time. A quiet pride. One morning, while she was refilling coffee for a group of regulars, the doorbell jingled, and David Langford walked in. He waved at her with a warm grin. "I hope I'm not interrupting breakfast rush," he said. Emily smiled. "Not at all. Want your usual?" "Please," he said, sitting down at the counter. "You're famous now, huh? Half the town's talking about you." She laughed softly. "Hardly. I still can't believe any of it. It feels like it's happening to someone else." David leaned forward, his eyes kind but serious. "It's happening to you, Emily, and you deserve it. Listen, I have some news. There's a music festival coming up next month, a bigger one, lots of artists, local and regional. They asked if I knew anyone special to open the evening segment." Emily froze. "You mean me?" He nodded. "Yes. I told them about you, and they were interested. It's a chance to reach even more people. It won't be easy, but I think you're ready." She stared at him, unsure what to say. "I don't know if I am. That's a real stage, David. This is just me, a waitress who plays piano." He smiled gently. "No, you're a musician who happens to work as a waitress. Don't let the world tell you otherwise." Those words sank deep into her heart. She didn't give him an answer right away. That night she went home, turned off her phone, and sat quietly in her apartment. The thought of performing in front of hundreds of people scared her, but it also excited her. She knew opportunities like this didn't come often. After hours of sitting there, she finally whispered to herself, "I'll do it." The next few weeks were the busiest of her life. She worked her shifts, then spent every free hour practicing. The diner owner, Mr. Harris, even started closing early some nights to let her use the piano. "Go ahead, Emily," he'd say, flipping the closed sign. "That piano's yours as much as mine." Sometimes Lena stayed late to listen. Sometimes she played alone, the soft clatter of dishes in the background, the only sound besides her music. The melody she chose for the festival was new, something she had been working on quietly for months, something that felt like her story and sound. It started small and hesitant, then grew stronger, braver and full of light. Every note carried a memory, her mother's smile, the long nights of struggle, the kind stranger who believed in her. The night before the festival, Emily couldn't sleep. She sat by the window, staring at the streetlights below. The world was quiet, but her mind was racing. She thought of all the people who had helped her: David, Lena, Mr. Harris. even the customers who encouraged her. Most of all, she thought of her mother. "I hope you'll be there," she whispered. The next day came faster than she expected. The festival grounds were already crowded when she arrived. Rows of chairs, colorful lights, laughter, and music drifting through the air. She could hear the sound of guitars and drums from the earlier performers. David met her backstage. "You ready?" he asked. She nodded, though her hands trembled slightly. "I think so." He smiled. "You're going to be amazing." As she waited for her turn, Emily closed her eyes and took slow, deep breaths. She could hear the crowd's excitement, the cheering, the applause for the act before hers. Then the announcer stepped up to the microphone and said, "Please welcome someone very special, a local artist whose music has touched hearts everywhere, Emily Carter." The lights dimmed. The crowd clapped politely as she walked onto the stage, her shoes clicking softly against the wooden floor. When she sat at the piano, the spotlight hit her face, and for a moment, the noise faded. She could barely see the audience, just the faint outlines of hundreds of faces waiting. Her fingers rested on the keys. Her heart pounded so hard she could feel it in her throat. Then she remembered what David had told her. "Just play what you feel." So she did. The first note rang out, clear and gentle. Then another. Slowly, the melody began to take shape, winding through the air like a story unfolding. The music wasn't loud or fast, but it had something deeper. Truth. It spoke of quiet mornings, lost dreams, and the courage to start again. As she played, she forgot the crowd. She forgot the lights, the noise, everything. She was back in the diner late at night, alone with her mother's memory and the sound of hope. The keys seemed to move by themselves. Then something incredible happened. The crowd grew silent, completely silent. People stopped talking, stopped moving, just listening. The music flowed like a river, gentle but powerful. Some people in the front row leaned forward, eyes shining. Others closed their eyes, lost in the emotion of it. When the last note faded into the night, Emily lifted her hands and sat still for a moment. The silence that followed was so deep it almost made her cry. Then suddenly, the audience rose to their feet, clapping, cheering, shouting her name. She blinked, overwhelmed, her hands covering her mouth. She could feel tears running down her cheeks, though she hadn't realized she was crying. David was the first to reach her backstage. "You did it," he said softly. "You made them feel something real." Emily smiled through her tears. "I was so scared." "That's what made it beautiful," he said. "You were honest." After the performance, people came up to her one after another. Strangers, organizers, even other musicians. They told her how much her music meant to them, how they saw their own struggles in her song. One woman said, "You made me remember my mother. Thank you." Emily held her hand and smiled, her heart full. She realized in that moment that this, not fame, not money, not attention, was what she had always wanted. To touch people, to remind them they weren't alone. Later that night, when the crowd had gone home and the stage lights dimmed, Emily stayed behind for a while. The night breeze brushed against her face as she looked out at the empty chairs. David walked up beside her. "You know," he said, "when I first heard you playing in that diner, I knew there was something special about you. But tonight, you proved something to yourself." "What's that?" she asked quietly. "That you belong here." Emily smiled. "I think I finally believe that." The next morning, her phone was flooded with messages and emails. Clips from her performance had been shared everywhere, and social media, local news, even a few music blogs. The headline read, "Waitress's piano performance brings festival crowd to tears." Her co-workers at the diner greeted her with cheers when she walked in. Lena hugged her tight. "You did it! You're all over the internet." Mr. Harris grinned. "I always said that piano had magic in it. Guess I was right." Emily laughed, her cheeks flushed with happiness. But even in all the excitement, she stayed humble. "It's still just me," she said softly. I still have to make coffee and serve breakfast. But deep inside, she knew that life had shifted again. Opportunities began to appear. Invitations to perform at small shows, requests to teach music lessons, offers from people wanting to collaborate. It was overwhelming, but she took it one step at a time. Despite everything, she never forgot where it began. She still played at the diner, sometimes late at night after closing, the same way she used to, quiet, alone, just for herself. Only now when she played, she smiled more, because she knew that somewhere out there people were listening. One evening, she received a letter from a music school in another city. They had seen her video and wanted to offer her a chance to record her original song professionally. Her hands trembled as she read it. It felt like another door opening, another beginning waiting for her. She looked up at the piano, sitting in its usual spot by the window. It wasn't much, chipped wood, faded keys, but it had carried her through everything. She walked over, ran her fingers along the surface and whispered, "Thank you." As she sat down to play, the soft light of dusk filled the room. Outside, the world kept moving, cars passing, people hurrying by. But inside, there was only music. Her music. Every note she played was a memory of her mother, of the diner, of the fear she had conquered, and of the strength she never knew she had. And as the final note faded into silence, Emily smiled through tears and said, quietly to herself, "This is just the start." The morning after the music festival, Emily woke up to the sound of her phone buzzing over and over again. At first, she thought it was an alarm. Then she realized it was full of notifications, messages, emails, and calls. She blinked in confusion, sat up slowly, and grabbed her phone. The screen was overflowing. Dozens of messages from friends, strangers, and even news outlets filled her inbox. Someone had uploaded a video of her performance, and it had already spread everywhere. Her name was suddenly all over social media. The title of one post read, "Waitress leaves festival audience crying with her piano performance." She scrolled, through the comments, her heart pounding. People she'd never met were sharing her story, talking about how her music reminded them of lost loved ones, of hope, of second chances. Some said they hadn't cried in years until they heard her song. Others wrote things like, "I don't even know this woman, but I feel like she played my heart." Emily sat there in silence for a long time, reading every word. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry. She had never expected any of this. The night before, she had played simply because it felt right, because her mother would have wanted her to. She hadn't thought anyone outside that small crowd would even notice. Her phone rang suddenly. It was David. "You've seen it, haven't you?" he said, his voice full of excitement. "I can't believe this," she whispered. "People from everywhere are watching. How is this even real?" David laughed softly. "It's real, Emily. You moved people. You reminded them what music is supposed to do, make them feel. That's rare these days." She didn't say anything at first, still trying to take it in. Then she said quietly, "I just played from my heart. And that's exactly why it worked," he replied. Over the next few days, the diner was busier than ever. People came not just for breakfast, but to meet her. Some brought flowers. Others left little notes at her table, thanking her for her music. One man even drove 3 hours just to shake her hand and say, "You made me remember what hope feels like." It was all overwhelming. Emily was still the same person, still tying her apron, still pouring coffee. But now everyone seemed to look at her differently. She tried to stay grounded. Whenever someone asked for a picture or an autograph, she smiled shyly and said, "I'm just happy you liked the song." Mr. Harris, the diner owner, took it all in with a proud grin. "Knew you'd make it big one day," he said one morning while cleaning the counter. "Guess we'll have to start calling this place the famous Waitress Cafe, huh?" She laughed. "Please don't, I still like it the way it is." But even as she laughed, deep down she knew her life was changing fast. Music schools, local radio stations, and even a few small record labels reached out. Everyone wanted her to perform, record, or collaborate. It was exciting and terrifying. She met with David to talk it over. "I don't want to lose myself in all this," she said. "I don't want it to become about fame or attention." David nodded thoughtfully. "Then don't let it. Remember why you play. For your mother, for yourself, for the people who listen and feel something. Keep that and you'll be fine." His words stayed with her. So when she finally agreed to record her song, she made sure it would stay true to her. Simple, emotional, raw. No heavy production, no auto-tuning, just her and the piano. The recording studio was small but beautiful. Wooden walls, soft lights, and a grand piano that seemed to glow under the spotlight. When she sat down to play, she closed her eyes and let the world fade away. The song came out the same way it had at the festival, full of truth. When she finished, the sound engineer sat quietly for a few seconds before saying softly, "That was perfect." The recording was released a week later under her name. She didn't expect much. But within days, it spread again. Radio stations picked it up, people streamed it online, and her story was featured on a local news channel. They called it the Song of the Heart. Through it all, Emily stayed humble. She still worked part-time at the diner. She still walked home the same way, under the soft streetlights. The only difference was that now, people sometimes stopped her on the sidewalk just to say thank you. One evening, as she was closing up the diner, an elderly woman came in. Her hands trembled slightly as she held her purse, and her eyes looked tired but kind. "Are you the young lady who played at the festival?" she asked. Emily nodded, surprised. "Yes, that was me." The woman smiled faintly. "My husband passed away 2 years ago. I haven't listened to music since then. It just hurt too much. But my daughter showed me your video, and I cried, for the first time in years. Not out of sadness. It felt like peace. Thank you for that." Tears filled Emily's eyes. She reached out and held the woman's hand. "Thank you for telling me. That means more than you know." When the woman left, Emily sat down at the piano in the corner, the same old piano she'd played on countless nights when the diner was empty. She touched the keys softly and whispered, "Maybe this is what I was meant to do all along." As the weeks passed, more opportunities came her way. Invitations to small concerts, charity events, even a chance to perform at a community center for children learning music. She accepted as many as she could, not for fame but to share her story, to show others that dreams can bloom even in the most ordinary places. She met young musicians who reminded her of herself, full of doubt, but full of heart. She told them, "Don't stop just because life gets hard. Sometimes the hardest times are the ones that make your music real." Her words seemed to give them courage, and seeing their faces light up made her feel like everything she had been through, every late night, every tear, every broken moment, had led to something beautiful. One night she sat with David on a park bench overlooking the quiet city lights. "Do you ever think about how strange it all is?" she asked. "A few months ago I was just serving coffee, trying to make ends meet, and now, all this." David smiled. "Life changes when you least expect it. You didn't chase fame, Emily. You chased honesty, and people can feel that. That's why they love your music." She looked down at her hands, the same hands that once trembled on the piano keys. "I just hope I never lose the feeling I had that first night at the diner, when it was just me and the piano." He shook his head. "You won't. That's who you are." As they sat in silence, a soft breeze brushed past, carrying the faint sound of someone playing a guitar nearby. The world felt wide and full of possibility. Months later, Emily received a letter that made her heart skip a beat. It was from a well-known recording company, not a huge one, but respected for nurturing real talent. They wanted to produce an album with her. She read it over and over, hardly believing it. Then she called David, her voice trembling. "They want to make an album," she said. He laughed with pure joy. "I knew this was coming. You earned it." The next few months were filled with long days and nights in the studio. She worked with patient, kind people who believed in her vision. They didn't try to change her. They just helped her capture her music the way it was meant to sound. The album was released quietly, without big marketing or glitter. But it didn't need any of that. It spoke for itself. Every song told a story of love, loss, and hope, stitched together with honesty. When the album came out, people didn't just listen. They felt it. Letters poured in from around the country, stories of how her songs helped someone heal, gave them courage, or reminded them of someone they loved. Emily read every one of them, often with tears in her eyes, and yet through it all she stayed the same. She still visited the diner often. She still sat at the old piano even when she didn't have to. She still helped out behind the counter sometimes, saying, "It feels like home here." Mr. Harris would laugh. "You can have all the fame you want, but you'll always be our girl." She'd grin and say, "Deal." One night, after everyone had gone home, she stayed late again. The diner was quiet, the neon sign outside flickering softly. She sat at the piano and looked around. The tables, the chairs, the smell of coffee, lingering in the air. This was where it had all started. She began to play, not for a crowd, not for cameras, but for herself. The music filled the room, gentle and warm. She closed her eyes, imagining her mother there, sitting by the window, with that proud smile. For the first time, Emily didn't feel like she was chasing anything. She had arrived exactly where she was meant to be. Not on a big stage, not under bright lights, but right here, with her piano and her heart open to the world. The sound echoed softly, fading into the night. And as the last note lingered, she whispered into the stillness, "Thank you, Mom, for everything." Then she smiled, knowing this was just the beginning of a new chapter, one she was ready to face, not as a waitress with a forgotten dream, but as a musician who finally found her voice. Morning light poured gently through the window, painting soft golden stripes across the floor of Emily's small apartment. She sat at her table with a cup of tea, looking out over the quiet street below. The world outside moved at its usual pace, people walking dogs, buses humming past, children laughing on their way to school. But for her, life felt different now. The past year had changed everything. Her music had found its way into people's lives, into hearts she would never meet in person. Her first album had done better than she'd ever dreamed, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. She had told her story honestly, and somehow that was enough. But she still lived simply. She still made her own breakfast, washed her own dishes, and went for long walks alone when her mind was too full. The fame that had come with her music never felt like something she owned. It felt borrowed, something fragile that she carried, with care. That morning, her phone buzzed with a new message from David. It read, "Meet me at the community center at 2 p.m. I've got something you'll want to see." She smiled, set down her cup, and began getting ready. The community center was only a short walk away, a small, cheerful building near the park, filled with kids' drawings taped to the walls. When she walked in, the sound of laughter and clumsy piano notes filled the air. A group of children were gathered around an old upright piano, their small fingers pressing random keys. David stood nearby, watching with a proud grin. When he saw Emily, he waved her over. "Glad you came," he said. "I've been working on something, thought it was time you saw it." She looked around, puzzled. "What's all this?" He gestured to the room. "It's a music program for kids who can't afford lessons or instruments. I started it with some local teachers, and guess what? The first donation came from the sales of your album." Emily's eyes widened. "You did this?" He smiled. "No, we did. You inspired it. Your story reminded people that music can come from anywhere, even a small-town diner. Now we're helping others find their voice too." She walked over to the piano, watching a little girl with braids try to play a simple melody. The child's face lit up when she got it right, even if the notes were uneven. Emily knelt beside her. "That's beautiful," she said softly. "Do you like playing?" The girl nodded shyly. I want to play like you someday. My teacher showed me your video. Emily felt her throat tighten. She placed her hand gently on the piano keys and said, You already have what it takes. You just need to keep believing in yourself. The girl smiled, and Emily smiled back, realizing that this, not fame or stages, was the true purpose of her journey. Later that day, after the children had gone home, she sat at the same piano. The sun slanted through the big windows, filling the room with warm light. David sat nearby, quietly tuning a guitar. You know, she said after a while, if my mother were here, she'd probably say she always knew this would happen. He chuckled softly. She'd be proud of you. You didn't just make music. You made something that lasts. Emily pressed a few soft notes, letting them echo through the empty hall. It feels strange, she said. For so long, I thought, the dream was just playing in front of people. But now I think it's something deeper. It's about connection, about reminding people they matter. David nodded. That's what real artists do, and you did it without losing yourself. She smiled, glancing at him. That was the hardest part. The next few months passed quickly. Emily continued to perform, but she also began teaching. She started a small workshop at the community center. Music for the heart, she called it. Every week, children and adults came to learn, not just about piano, but about expressing themselves. Some were shy. Some had never touched an instrument before, but Emily made them feel safe. She told them stories about her mother, the diner, the nights when she thought her dream was gone forever. When she played for them, she didn't perform. She shared. And in those quiet moments, when the room filled with sound and soft smiles, she felt truly alive. Her music continued to reach new places. One of her songs was used in a short film that won an award. Another was played at a wedding where the couple said it made them both cry. But the biggest joy for her came from small moments. A handwritten note from a student saying, Your music helped me feel brave again. She kept every letter, every message in a small wooden box by her piano. On hard days, she'd open it and read them, reminding herself of why she started. Then, one afternoon, something unexpected happened. She received a letter from the same diner where it had all begun. Mr. Harris had decided to retire and wanted to give her something before he left. When she arrived, the diner looked the same. Warm light spilling through the windows, the smell of coffee in the air. It felt like stepping back in time. Mr. Harris greeted her with a smile. It's been a while, kiddo, she laughed softly. It really has. The place hasn't changed at all. He gestured toward the corner. It's still got that old piano, too. Been sitting there waiting for you. Emily walked over to it, running her fingers over the worn wood. So many memories lived in that piano. Late nights, empty rooms, the first spark of courage. Mr. Harris handed her an envelope. I wanted you to have this, he said. The piano's yours now. Consider it a gift, a thank you for bringing life into this place all those years. She opened the envelope and found the ownership papers, neatly signed. Tears filled her eyes. I don't know what to say. Say you'll keep playing, he said simply. She smiled through her tears. I promise. A few weeks later, with help from friends, she had the piano moved to her small studio, the same space where she now taught her students. The day it arrived, she spent hours cleaning and polishing it. Then she sat down and played the first song she'd ever written, the one that had made the festival audience cry. The notes still sounded the same, maybe even better. But now when she played, she felt no fear, no sadness, meant only peace. Her life became a rhythm of teaching, performing, and creating. She traveled sometimes, but she always returned home, to her quiet apartment, her community center, and her piano. Sometimes, late at night, she'd get messages from people across the world, people who said they listened to her songs to fall asleep, or when they missed someone they loved. It amazed her that music, something invisible, could reach across oceans and connect hearts that had never met. One winter evening, after a long day of teaching, Emily went for a walk through the snow. The city was calm, wrapped in white silence. She passed by the diner again, now closed, its sign faintly glowing. She stopped in front of the window and smiled softly. She could almost see her younger self inside, wiping tables, dreaming quietly, unaware that everything she needed was already within her. When she got home, she lit a candle and sat at the piano. The room was still, the flame flickering gently beside her. She began to play, not a rehearsed song, just something new, something that flowed naturally from her heart. It started as a whisper of sound, delicate and slow, then grew stronger, brighter. The melody felt like a letter, one she was writing, to her mother, to the diner, to every person who had ever believed in her. When she finished, she sat there for a long time, eyes closed, smiling. In that moment, she realized something. Her journey had never really been about becoming someone else. It had been about returning to who she always was, the waitress who loved to play, the daughter who found healing in music, the woman who learned that her voice could reach the world. The next morning, she wrote a new song and titled it Home. It was the truest thing she had ever written, a song about beginnings, endings, and everything in between. Months later, when she performed it at a local concert, the audience once again sat in silent awe, and when she played the final note, many wiped tears from their eyes. Emily looked up at the crowd, her heart full. She no longer felt small or uncertain. She felt connected, to them, to her past, to her purpose. And as the applause rose, she smiled softly and whispered into the microphone, "Thank you for listening. This song is for anyone who ever thought their dream was too small. It's never too late." When the lights dimmed and the hall emptied, she stayed behind, sitting quietly at the piano. Outside, the night sky stretched wide and full of stars. She looked up, her eyes shining. "We did it, Mom," she said. Then she pressed her fingers to the keys one last time, letting the music drift into the stillness, and gentle, honest, eternal. And in that sound lived everything she had ever been, and everything she would still become. Morning light poured gently through the window, painting soft golden stripes across the floor of Emily's small apartment. She sat at her table with a cup of tea, looking out over the quiet street below. The world outside moved at its usual pace, people walking dogs, buses humming past, children laughing on their way to school. But for her, life felt different now. The past year had changed everything. Her music had found its way into people's lives, into hearts she would never meet in person. Her first album had done better than she'd ever dreamed, not because it was flashy, but because it was real. She had told her story honestly, and somehow that was enough. But she still lived simply. She still made her own breakfast, washed her own dishes, and went for long walks alone when her mind was too full. The fame that had come with her music never felt like something she owned. It felt borrowed, something fragile that she carried with care. That morning, her phone buzzed with a new message from David. It read, "Meet me at the community center at 2 p.m. I've got something you'll want to see." She smiled, set down her cup, and began getting ready. The community center was only a short walk away, a small, cheerful building near the park, filled with kids' drawings taped to the walls. When she walked in, the sound of laughter and clumsy piano notes filled the air. A group of children were gathered around an old upright piano, their small fingers pressing random keys. David stood nearby, watching with a proud grin. When he saw Emily, he waved her over. "Glad you came," he said. "I've been working on something, thought it was time you saw it." She looked around, puzzled. "What's all this?" He gestured to the room. "It's a music program for kids who can't afford lessons or instruments. I started it with some local teachers. And guess what? The first donation came from the sales of your album." Emily's eyes widened. "You did this?" He smiled. "No, we did. You inspired it. Your story reminded people that music can come from anywhere, even a small-town diner. Now we're helping others find their voice too." She walked over to the piano, watching a little girl with braids try to play a simple melody. The child's face lit up when she got it right, even if the notes were uneven. Emily knelt beside her. That's beautiful, she said softly. Do you like playing? The girl nodded shyly. I want to play like you someday. My teacher showed me your video. Emily felt her throat tighten. She placed her hand gently on the piano keys and said, You already have what it takes. You just need to keep believing in yourself. The girl smiled and Emily smiled back, realizing that this, not fame or stages, was the true purpose of her journey. Later that day, after the children had gone home, she sat at the same piano. The sun slanted through the big windows, filling the room with warm light. David sat nearby, quietly tuning a guitar. You know, she said after a while, if my mother were here, she'd probably say she always knew this would happen. He chuckled softly. She'd be proud of you. You didn't just make music. You made something that lasts. Emily pressed a few soft notes, letting them echo through the empty hall. It feels strange, she said. For so long I thought the dream was just playing in front of people, but now I think it's something deeper. It's about connection, about reminding people they matter. David nodded. That's what real artists do, and you did it without losing yourself. She smiled, glancing at him. That was the hardest part. The next few months passed quickly. Emily continued to perform, but she also began teaching. She started a small workshop at the community center. Music for the Heart, she called it. Every week, children and adults came to learn, not just about piano, but about expressing themselves. Some were shy. Some had never touched an instrument before. But Emily made them feel safe. She told them stories about her mother, the diner, the nights when she thought her dream was gone forever. When she played for them, she didn't perform. She shared. And in those quiet moments when the room filled with sound and soft smiles, she felt truly alive. Her music continued to reach new places. One of her songs was used in a short film that won an award. Another was played at a wedding, where the couple said it made them both cry. But the biggest joy for her came from small moments. A handwritten note from a student saying, Your music helped me feel brave again. She kept every letter, every mess,